to serve.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolf alongside Nick Wright, Kevin Wilds. Chris Broussard is with us on a Monday morning. We got a lot to get to today. There's so much NFL stuff leading up to the draft on Thursday. But if Broussard is here, we got to start with his GOAT, and that's Michael Jordan. So here we go. As of this morning, guys, it's been 40 days now since the NBA was officially shut down. Last night, however, the NBA was front and center. The first two episodes of The Last Dance documentary aired, chronicling Michael Jordan's final season with the Chicago Bulls. No spoiler alerts, please. I'm only 2 episodes in. Really want to know how it all ends. But Nick, let's kick this off with you. What was your biggest takeaway from last night?
Well, for people, if they missed it, it is about the last season of the Bulls dynasty, but it also takes us back to the very beginning of the Bulls dynasty, or the very beginning of Jordan's run in Chicago, I should say, in the mid-'80s. And my biggest takeaway was further confirmation that if you are a transcendent superstar when it comes to basketball, if you are going to be one of the all-time greats, it is instant. Michael Jordan was 23 years old, and he scored 63 points in a playoff game against one of, if not, the greatest team ever up to that point, the '86 Celtics. When Kareem was 23 years old in his second year in the league, he won league MVP en route to winning finals MVP. Duncan's 23, and he's finals MVP. Wilt's 23, and he sets a then NBA record 53 points in a playoff game. Go up and down the list. Bill Russell, 23 and a champion. Kevin Durant, 23 and makes his first NBA Finals. Kobe Bryant, when he was truly 1A to 1B to Shaq's 1A, 23 years old. LeBron James, the 48 special against Detroit. Well, he was 22, but we should expect that. The point is, though, that all of these guys, there is no, are they going to get there? Is there? I'm not sure. It's if you are that type of player, it is like that. And for the vast majority of those guys, in fact, for all of them, except for Magic, it also was in their second time in the playoffs. One time you figure it out. Second time through the playoffs, you start to take over. And it was a reminder to me, Wilds, that for Jordan, we look at Jordan as being the greatest player ever for some, or certainly at that point, the greatest player ever once he started winning championships. But for the guys he was competing against, Wilds, they looked at him as potentially the greatest player in the league by game 100, by game 120, and that's what we saw last night, Kevin.
Yeah, that's interesting, Nick. I looked back and I was surprised to see so much Roy Williams in the documentary. So I looked at it, I was like, oh, you see Roy Williams, then you see Dean Smith, and you see Bobby Knight. So out of the most winningest coaches, he had 3 of the top 5. So I thought that part was fascinating. I thought the most interesting thing of the whole documentary was Scottie Pippen's contract. I thought Scottie Pippen taking less money and prioritizing the stability of his family was an honorable decision, even if it proved not to be the correct financial decision. I thought that was fantastic. Here's the Bulls' top 6 salaries from that season of 97, 98. And there you see Pippen way down at the bottom, number 6. I also thought, off of that contract, when he elects to have surgery, that you started to see how great Phil was. They asked Phil, they said, Phil, are you concerned, or did that upset you that Scottie purposely missed the beginning of the season? He said no. And you saw some real Zen-like qualities from Phil. So I thought Scottie's decision to make the honorable choice to prioritize his family was fascinating, and the Zen master really giving us a little glimpse in what made that team so successful.
Hey, Broussard, you were all over this back then. You covered the NBA back in '97. What was your biggest takeaway from what you saw last night?
My biggest takeaway was that it didn't have to end that early. And early might sound strange to people because they obviously won 6 championships. But that second three-peat team was broken up prematurely. And that is something that bothered me when I was watching this yesterday, because Michael Jordan said it after winning championship number 5. We deserve the right to defend what we've built. Let somebody else beat us on the court. Don't let our front office just dismantle us. Scottie Pippen was still fairly young, went to Houston and Portland, after that season and had some good years. Jordan was still the best player in the world. You know, Dennis Rodman still has some basketball left in him. You obviously had the great coach in Phil Jackson. And it just bothered me to no end that Jerry Krause destroyed that team before it was time. Now, would they have gone on to win their 4th championship in a row? I don't know, but I would have loved to have seen them play Tim Duncan and David Robinson of the Spurs, which would have been the matchup if they had gotten to the finals in '99. And I tell you this, and I know there's going to be a lot of comparisons to the players of today, and particularly LeBron James. I don't think we should do that with every little issue. However, when you look at LeBron ushering in this era of player empowerment, you see why. And a lot of people who've criticized him for that should actually appreciate now what he's done when you look at the fact that Jordan, Phil Jackson, Scottie Pippen, the way they were treated in that last season in Chicago. For Jerry Krause to say to Phil Jackson, you could go 82-0 and this is your last year, that makes no sense whatsoever. And so Scottie Pippen is, as was said earlier, the 122nd highest paid player in the league. That's horrible. And so you see why LeBron, and don't get mad at LeBron and Kawhi Leonard and Anthony Davis and these guys who are now taking their future and their destiny into their own hands because they don't think management or ownership will always have their best interest at heart. And we saw that in this documentary.
That's such an interesting point. We are going to discuss that. But, you know, so much of Michael Jordan's personal life has been chronicled. So much of what he did on the court has already been chronicled. And then you see everything play out last night leading up to that final season. Nick, what if anything, surprised you from what you saw?
Well, so two points. One, in quick response to Broussard, which I think was a great point, that we now look at it like it was broken up prematurely. I do wonder if that actually was good for the legend of Michael Jordan, that we never saw him lose. Yeah. Because that 98 years, spoiler alert for folks that don't know it, they were teetering. They got taken 7 games by a good but far from great Pacers team. They were on fumes in those NBA finals en route to beating the Jazz. So you do feel like had Jerry Krause not broken it up, it would have broken up on its own. And then maybe Jordan isn't the perfect 6 for 6, which I know so many people hold in better regard than if he were 6 for 7 or 6 for 8. But Jenna, to answer your question, what was I most surprised by? And there's a famous quote by a fictional character, Rust Cole. It's time is a flat circle. I have a new quote that I hope can gain something close to that notoriety.
All right.
And the quote is this: old people be lying, okay? Old people be lying. And here's what I mean.
It's not going to take off.
Zion Williamson comes back, and his first game back, he's on a minutes restriction. And we are told it is the softening of America. It is young folks run amok, and it wasn't like this back in the day. That was a minutes restriction. I watched a game in the mid-'80s last night. Michael Jordan was on a seconds restriction. The GM came down, said 17 seconds, he cannot play. I've heard for the last few years, Broussard, that tanking is a new thing that Daryl Morey and Sam Hinkie and all these analytical people invented, and it's the bane of basketball existence. I watched a team in the mid-'80s last year that tried to potentially tank their way out of the playoffs. So to that I say, old people be lying. What is old is new, what is new is old. And Broussard, I put it on you as the resident basketball historian, not the resident old person, but you might be the oldest person on the show, to remind America that it's always been like this, Broussard.
You know what, Nick? I have to give you kudos. That was a great quote you just gave. Old people be lying, because I looked at it the same way. Michael Jordan and Danny Ainge went golfing the day before he scored 63 points against the Celtics. All we hear is, oh, they hated each other, guys, back then. There was no friendship. These guys were arch enemies. Jordan and Magic didn't get along. Jordan and Bird, Jordan hated the Celtics. No, I know Isaiah Thomas, the legend. He would go into the Celtics locker room during the finals before he got there and bask in their winning. Go to the Lakers locker room because he was friends with Magic and bask in their winning. He's told me that's how I learned how to win. He was close with Kevin McHale. McHale let him come along for the ride and learn from the Celtics. So, this notion that the players of yesteryear were so tough and hated each other. No, Jordan and Ainge were out golfing. They were golfing buddies, for goodness sake. So Nick is right. Old people be lying. Older people than me.
Oh, God, don't give this any credence.
Wildes, what surprised you?
Well, before I get to my surprise, because I missed it the first time, I need to say, total transparency, congratulations. My wife is an executive producer on the film. She's upstairs. Libster, we're saying nice things about you. And the entire team that made this documentary happen. Like, I've been in sports for 25 years, and I've heard about this footage for 20 years. So big kudos to everyone in the entire team that made this happen. My other big surprise, and I think this will play out later in later episodes, was how hard it is to be Michael Jordan. And it's when the audio guy wants an autograph, and at the end of that Paris game, a player comes over like, "Can I have your armband?" And Michael's like, "Yeah, whatever." I think that he is under an insane microscope, and it's going to play out later in the documentary of how actually difficult it was to live his everyday life.
All right, well, we got 2 episodes last night, so we have a lot to dive into, which we will get to later in the program. We are going to take a little break. Coming up, Nick Wright is confident he can win $10,000.